Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Recently, the family and I went to an event in Jackson, Tennessee, and while we were there, we went to find a place to have lunch. On the way to lunch, we passed by a really cool looking thrift store. It was called the Regional Interfaith Thrift Store, and the family demanded that I turn around and we go back and do some thrifting. It's one of our favorite activities to do when we're out and about, especially when we're in towns where we don't live. I walked in the store and it was pretty much like every other thrift store. They had the same kind of selections as you typically would find in a charity thrift, but what caught my attention was off to one side, there was a place that had food. I walked over and started looking around, and immediately that light bulb went off and I started looking at things to build a homemade MRE. So now a lot of people are probably watching this going, a homemade MRE from a thrift store? That's weird, or that's gross. But let me tell you something about the way this store operates. The food section there is mostly intended for people in need. The food items are super cheap, and they have put a limit on how much of each thing you can buy so that nobody, like say me, comes in and buys everything they have out of the canned food section or the drink section or whatever, and then there's nothing left available for the folks in need. So I was very cautious about the things that I picked up. I got only what I needed in order to make this video, which wasn't easy. This is not a traditional MRE, so to speak. The purpose of this video is not to show you a perfect MRE. It's to show you that even in strange and unusual environments, a lot of times you can find what you need to get fed. So I limited myself to what I bought, but there was one item in particular that really caught my attention that kind of sparked the whole thing, and I'm really excited to show you guys this. But without further ado, let me introduce you to the Dad Budget Adventures Homemade MRE Menu TS1, my thrift store MRE. This thing is very heavy and very full. This is one of those things that's not, like I said, it's not a traditional MRE. When you're shopping for food at a thrift store, you gotta take what you can get sometimes. So let's tear into this and see what's in my homemade thrift store MRE. All right, so first up is my entree. And this was the item that kind of got this whole thing rolling. When I saw this, I knew I had to have it. And then I was gonna have to find other things to make this work. But what makes this item really cool is that this is an item that's produced right here in Tennessee, and it's designed for feeding people in need. This is Project Preserve Vegetarian Lasagna. It's just a small can that contains lasagna. I'm really curious about what this lasagna is going to be like. I figure it's probably going to be kind of like Chef Boyardee, but I have no idea. I'm not familiar with the brand, and if you are, I'd love to hear your input on this company and anything that you know about it, or if they have other products that are available. So before we go any further, let me pop the top on this. Let's get it in the trucker's lunchbox so it can be cooking while we go through the other items in this kit. Oh, it doesn't fit. All right, we'll just leave it with the top open like that so we can get it cooked. All right, the next item up is our side, and this was one of those things where I had to kind of think outside the box, but I did manage to find a pack of baked flaming hot Cheetos. I figure something with a little spice to it will go great with that lasagna. For our walking around snack, I found something completely unexpected. They had single serve packets of cachava. If you're at all familiar with cachava, it's kind of like a protein shake, but it's also got a lot of extra vitamins and minerals and nutrients because it's got greens and things like that in it. So they were selling the individual packets, so I picked one of those up. I figure making a nutrient and protein shake as a walking around snack, that's going to be a winner. Now, I've never tried cachava before. I have no idea what to expect. I don't know what it tastes like, but we're about to find out. For our dessert, I found this Millville fruit and grain bar. This is the mixed berry flavor. I'm a little iffy on this because if you know me, you know I do not like raspberry. Raspberry tends to be one of the berries in mixed berry stuff. But like I said, there wasn't a whole lot of options here. Sometimes when you're hungry, you got to eat what you got in front of you. So I'm going to take that hit for you guys. For our beverage, they had these cans of the Waterloo Lemon Lime Seltzer. While typically I don't put canned drinks in my MREs, this is one of those cases where they didn't have a lot of other options, so I decided to go with that. And we've got one more item in here that's kind of a bonus item. While I was shopping, I also came across this Mission Pride fruit mix. So we got this big old can of fruit cocktail. Once again, just having extra items like this in your meals just gives you a little extra bump of calories or sugar or energy or whatever it is you're needing. And if the rest of the meal is not quite doing it for you, you got that little something extra. And if you don't get around to eating it, you can always save it for later. All right, so let's get in here and start trying some of this stuff and see what we ended up with. Of course, first thing, we're gonna pop open our Waterloo Lemon Lime Seltzer. That way we've got something to wash it down with if one of these things is kind of funky. That smells like Alka-Seltzer. Not gonna lie, there's no Two ways about it. That smells like Alka-Seltzer. Hopefully it tastes better. Let's give it a try. Cheers. Fortunately, it doesn't taste like Alka-Seltzer. One of the things that I enjoy about these kind of drinks is that there's no sugar in them. There's no extra additives to it. It's just sparkling water and a little bit of flavor. So it's very mild. It's not an overwhelming flavor, and it goes well with other things. If you want to use this as a drink mixer, you can do that. Or if you just need it to quench your thirst, these are pretty handy. All right, now that we've got our drink open, let's do something spicy. I haven't tried the baked Cheetos before of any kind, so this is going to be a new experience for me. But I do like things a little bit spicy, so we'll see how this is going to go. Now, typically I have a set of rules that I use when I'm building my homemade MREs. I'll drop those down in the description box below if you're interested in what I usually apply as my standards for how I do this. In this particular case, the rule about having a 1-year shelf life on the items in this kit just goes out the window. A lot of these have a very short best by date because a lot of this stuff is donated once people figure they're just going to toss it out of their pantry. However, I will say that lasagna has a really long best by date on it. So not only is that stuff great for feeding the needy, it's a great prepping item if you can find it. Ooh, those got some heat to them. That'll clear your sinuses out. All right, let's give these things a try. See how these baked, flaming hot Cheetos are. Ooh, I like those. That's an interesting texture they've got to them. I expected them to be kind of like the cheesy poof style Cheetos, but these are your traditional crunchy style Cheetos. They're just baked. Those are good, but they do bring the heat. Let's mix up this cachava and see what this is all about. So I have my typical redneck Chinaware. While I'm getting this mixed up, I'll tell you a story about something that happened while we were at the thrift store. Please understand, I don't tell stories like this to glorify my compassion and make me sound like I'm any better of a person than I actually am. But while I was back shopping for the items for this meal, a gentleman walked up to me and just started talking to me. He very quickly got to the topic of being in need and being hungry. He told me that the place that he usually gets food from isn't serving anything that night, so he was going to be hungry for the evening. Now, one thing that I will not do is I never give money to people in his position. You know, you can say what you want about people with addiction issues or gambling issues or whatever and feel like if you give them money, they're going to go spend it on that. That's not for me to control, but I'm also not going to contribute to that. So the way that I deal with that is if somebody's hungry, I'm never going to deny them a meal. So the guy told me he was hungry and that the lady at the front counter had given him a drink. And I said, look, just pick out what you want. I got you. So he started going through and he picked out a couple of items. He picked out a bag of chips and one of those fruit and grain bars. And he just kind of stood there holding those items. And I said, look, man, get some food. Get whatever you want. I'm telling you, I got you. So he picked up a couple more things and he really still just had some snacks. So there were some cans of SpaghettiOs in there. And I said, look, man, just get you something that resembles real food. Get something so you'll feel like you have something in your belly. So he got an armful of stuff. We walked up to the register and I had them ring it up and I paid for it. And honestly, it didn't even cost me $5 to make sure this guy got a meal. So it's one of those situations where I felt like I was in the right place at the right time to help somebody out. But I told you that story to tell you this. The fact is, you never know when you're going to be in a position that you could help somebody out. And if you're not comfortable giving someone like that money, you can always make sure they get fed. I would hate to think that my own cynicism about somebody's true motives would prevent somebody from getting a meal. And if somebody's truly in need and truly hungry, they're not going to say no if you offer to pay for their food. And a lot of times, it's not going to cost you much. All right, let's get this cachava shook up and see how this is. Now set this down for a second, let everything dissolve a little bit. We'll give it another shake and then we'll try it. But in the meantime, let's open up this fruit cocktail. By the way, while we're on the subject of people in need, some of you may be wondering what is going on with Operation Meals Ready to Feed. You guys were so generous and sent me so much stuff. I've got it all inventoried and set aside and ready to go. I'm going to be organizing a get-together soon. Maybe some of you guys can make it, or I can lay all this stuff out and we can get it set into individual meals so that they're all packaged up and ready to go. I would have liked to have had this done sooner, but due to some family medical issues that have been coming up, I've been having to spend some of my weekends going up to visit family and take care of some things like that. But I am getting this thing back on track and we will be moving on that very soon. If you guys are not following me on Instagram, go over there and follow Dad Budget Adventures on Instagram because I'll probably post information there about the meetup to get together and put those kits together. All right, let's see what we've got here with this fruit cocktail. There's not much in here. It looks like there's only 2 or 3 different kinds of fruit in here, and there's no cherries. What's up with that? All right, let's give this a try. That's pretty fair for a fruit cocktail that doesn't have cherries in it. It's very sweet. It's got that flavor that's reminiscent of childhood. This particular kind is packed in light syrup. And the great thing about this is not only do you have the fruit that's in there, but you can use that syrup for other things. You can either drink it or you can add it into other stuff. All right, let's give our cachava one more shake, and then we're going to try that. All righty. It smells kind of like a chocolate instant breakfast drink. It's not quite as proteiny smelling as a lot of protein shakes are, but it's very chocolatey smelling. So let's give that a try. Right off the top, I got a glob that didn't get mixed in. That is a really unusual flavor. It's not an unpleasant flavor. It's got a good chocolate taste to it, but I can taste that there are things in there that I don't typically get in other chocolate drinks. The mixture of the other greens and additives and stuff in there gives it a really unique flavor. Fortunately, it's a good flavor, but it's definitely different. Seems like a good way to get some nutrients. All right, let's clear that out a little bit. All right, I think it's time to try our vegetarian lasagna. I really want to see if this is something that I could hand to somebody in need with a certain amount of pride. Or is it something that I might not feel so good about? Let's give it a taste and find out. Let's mix this up a little bit. It's got a very thick consistency to it, and I don't know if that would thin out if we got it really good and heated through. It's got a white sauce to it as opposed to a red sauce, so more of a bechamel, I guess. It's got an interesting smell to it. It's really something I can't describe as being good or bad. It smells like food. It also smells canned, but let's get in here and see how it tastes, because that's really what matters. Noodles are busted up pretty good. Now, I will say that this is not just a bunch of sauce with a little bit of stuff floating in it like you get with brands like Chef Boyardee. There's a lot of solid food content in here. But let's give it a bite, see what we've got here. So it's a little on the bland side. It is not an exciting flavor at all. It's got peas, I think, green beans, things like that in it. So it is a true vegetarian lasagna. It's not vegetarian in that it doesn't have meat in it. It's vegetarian as in it's got vegetables in it. Let's try another bite. So a picky eater might not be real thrilled with this. Like I said, it's bland. It's not a wonderful taste, but if you're hungry, it's going to fill your belly. I do think, though, that it could benefit maybe from some of this. Let's get some hot sauce in it. See if that helps at all. At least give it a little zing, if nothing else. Bon appetit. That helps a lot. A little zing of that vinegar really just kind of wakes this up a little bit. If you had some Parmesan cheese, something like that to add into it, that would probably help a lot too. Or maybe just a little bit of salt. As a foundation, though, it's not bad. I could definitely work with that to make something a lot better. You know what I bet would be really good? Flamin' Hot Cheetos make a pretty good topper on stuff. If you've never had elote street corn with Flamin' Hot Cheeto crumbs on top of it, you're missing out. Give that a try. All right, let's try it this way. See what we got. That works so surprisingly well. I did not expect that. That really woke up that lasagna. It's very mushy, so adding a little bit of crunch to it helps a lot, but the extra flavor of those Flamin' Hot Cheetos, that's a win. By the way, if you're enjoying this content, don't forget to give this video a like. Also, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell so you can be made aware of all upcoming videos. And as usual, just like I'm feeding my belly right now, feed the algorithm. Leave a comment. Tell me what you think about the items that were in this kit. And if you have ever found food at a thrift store. But not only that, but did you buy it? Would you buy it? This one shocked me. It really did. All right, let's cleanse the palate a little bit. We got one more thing to try. This one I have a hard time getting excited about because of the raspberry thing, but I always want to make sure that I'm trying everything. Even if I know it's something I might not like, I'm willing to at least try it. At least then you guys will know what my experience was. It smells good enough. I can smell the fruit. It's not overly raspberry smelling. So I'm hoping that maybe the strawberries and blueberries or whatever else is in here might kind of balance some of that out. Let's give that a try. It's not too bad. It doesn't have an overwhelming raspberry flavor to it. I can taste that it's in there, but I think part of my issue with raspberries is that they do tend to be really strong tasting to me. So having other things in there that kind of calm that down a little bit, I think that's a good way to go. But I do want to try something with this. The pastry dough that goes into things like this makes a really good crumble to put on fruit cocktail. Let's drop some of that in there. See if we can make us a little fruit cobbler. Let's get a bite of that. A little bit of everything. The fruit and grain bar, the fruit cocktail. There's a bite worth having. Going in. Yep, 10 out of 10. Highly recommend. All right, everybody, that is it for my homemade MRE from a thrift store. I never in the history of this channel thought I would be using that phrase in one of my videos. This is completely bananas. It was a fun journey, and getting to try something just completely unexpected and just out of nowhere. You could not have told me when I walked in that store that I was going to walk out with a homemade MRE. I hope you like this one, and until the next one, prepare for the world that you live in, not the one you wish existed. We'll see you around.